At the bustling airport, on what seemed like an ordinary morning, a young black teenager stood nervously, clutching his ticket, excitement brimming in his eyes. He was about to board a flight to the opportunity of a lifetime, or so he thought. Little did he know, a single act of prejudice at the check-in counter would set off a chain of events that would change his life forever. What happened next is a story of resilience, unexpected kindness, and a twist you won't see coming. Stay tuned to uncover the journey that turned a moment of despair into a life-altering triumph. The airport buzzed with the chaotic symphony of rolling suitcases, distant announcements, and hurried footsteps. Kevin Baker stood just outside the check-in line, his fingers gripping the straps of his worn backpack. Inside it were neatly folded clothes, a math textbook, and a folder containing everything he needed for the international STEM competition, a dream he had worked tirelessly to reach. The teenager exhaled slowly, his breath steadying the flutter of nerves in his chest. This was his first time flying alone. His mother, who worked double shifts as a nurse, had sacrificed much to afford his ticket. Her parting words echoed in his mind. "You've earned this, Kevin. Show them what you're made of." The line moved forward, and Kevin approached the counter. Behind it stood a sharp-featured woman in her mid-40s, her name tag reading Miss Stone. Her eyes scanned him with a fleeting look of disapproval before she forced a tight smile. "Good morning," Kevin greeted, his voice polite but soft, as he slid his confirmation papers and ID across the counter. Miss Stone gave them a cursory glance before tapping her keyboard. "You're flying to Chicago?" "Yes, ma'am," Kevin replied. His excitement bubbled under the surface, but he kept it restrained. Her brows furrowed as she scrutinized the screen. There seems to be an issue with your ticket." Kevin's stomach sank. "An issue?" he asked, his voice tinged with concern. I confirmed everything last night. Is something wrong?" Miss Stone clicked her tongue, her disapproving gaze locking onto him. "It says here that this ticket might be invalid. Do you even have the means to pay for a ticket like this?" The words hit Kevin like a punch to the gut. A flush of embarrassment crept up his neck as the people in line behind him began to glance in his direction. He straightened his posture, his voice firm but respectful. "My ticket is valid, ma'am. My school purchased it. Maybe it's a system error." Miss Stone let out a condescending laugh, shaking her head. "System error, honey? This isn't a lottery where just anyone gets a ticket. Step aside so I can help someone who actually belongs here." The humiliation stung like a slap. Kevin felt his throat tighten, but he swallowed the lump that threatened to form. He stepped aside, clutching his backpack like a lifeline. His mind raced, searching for a solution. Should he call his teacher? But the flight was boarding in less than an hour. Would there be enough time? As Kevin stood helplessly by the counter, his ears burned from the whispers of the passengers behind him. Words like "poor kid" and "probably tried to scam his way" and floated in the air, each one twisting the knife in his heart. Suddenly, a voice cut through the murmur. What seems to be the problem here? It restrained. The voice carried an air of authority, sharp yet calm. Kevin turned to see a tall woman with a confident stride approaching the counter. Her tailored navy blue blazer bore the insignia of the airline, and her name badge read Sarah Lewis, Executive Operations Manager. She had the commanding presence of someone who could resolve any issue. Miss Stone stiffened. "Oh, Miss Lewis, there's no problem, just a little misunderstanding." Sarah's sharp eyes shifted to Kevin, her expression softening as she took in the young man's tense stance and the unshed tears brimming in his eyes. "Misunderstanding?" she repeated, her tone growing icy. "Let me see his ticket." Miss Stone hesitated but reluctantly handed over the documents. Sarah studied them briefly, her brows knitting in disapproval. She turned back to Kevin. "Your ticket is perfectly valid," she said, her voice calm but firm. Kevin blinked in surprise. "It is." "But she said." "I know what she said," Sarah interrupted gently. Her gaze shifted to Miss Stone, now visibly uncomfortable. "And I'll be addressing it. But first, let's make sure you get to your gate." Sarah extended her hand toward Kevin. For a moment, he hesitated, unsure if this was truly happening. Then, with a small nod, he handed over his documents. The executive's presence felt like a shield, deflecting the judgmental stares from the crowd. "Come with me," Sarah said, her tone leaving no room for argument. As they walked toward the security checkpoint, Kevin felt a mix of relief and apprehension. He glanced back at Miss Stone, who now stood frozen at the counter, her lips pressed into a thin line, A storm brewed in her eyes, but Sarah didn't look back. The humiliated agent's words echoed in Kevin's mind, but Sarah's calm assurance began to drown them out. For the first time that morning, a spark of hope ignited within him. Maybe, just maybe, this wouldn't be the end of his journey. As they reached the checkpoint, Sarah leaned down slightly, her voice quieter now. "Tell me, Kevin, what's in Chicago?" The teenager straightened his shoulders, his earlier apprehension melting away. "A STEM competition," he said, pride evident in his voice. "I'm representing my school." Sarah's lips curved into a small, approving smile. "Well, Kevin, let's make sure you get there. No one gets to tell you where you belong." With those words, something shifted in Kevin's chest, a sense of possibility blooming where shame had taken root. Little did he know, this moment would mark the beginning of a life-changing journey. Kevin followed Sarah through the airport with a mixture of awe and disbelief. He wasn't used to people stepping in for him, not like this. His mother always taught him to rely on himself, to solve his problems with determination and hard work. But this time, no amount of effort could have undone the humiliation he had just experienced. As they approached the security checkpoint, Sarah handed Kevin's documents to the officer without a word. The officer glanced at her badge and gave a quick nod, waving them through without delay. Kevin couldn't help but marvel at how effortlessly she commanded respect. Once they were past the checkpoint, Sarah slowed her pace, her sharp gaze softening as she turned to him. "How are you holding up?" she asked. Kevin hesitated, his hands tightening on the straps of his backpack. He wasn't sure how to respond. "I'm okay, I guess," he said quietly. "Thank you for helping me. I didn't know what I was going to do back there." Sarah stopped walking and crouched slightly to meet his eyes. "You shouldn't have had to go through that," she said firmly. "People like Miss Stone think they can get away with treating others unfairly, but I won't allow it. Not on my watch." Her words, laced with quiet fury, sent a wave of relief through Kevin. For the first time, he felt like someone was truly on his side. I didn't want to cause a scene," he admitted, his voice tinged with embarrassment. "I thought maybe if I stayed quiet, it would all work out." Sarah's expression softened further, and she placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Staying quiet only helps people like her get away with it," she said. "You have every right to stand up for yourself, Kevin. Don't let anyone make you feel like you don't belong." Her words hit him harder than he expected, stirring something deep within him. Kevin nodded, a small flicker of resolve igniting in his chest. "Now," Sarah continued, straightening up and resuming their walk, "tell me more about this competition. STEM, right? What's your specialty?" Kevin's face lit up, despite himself. "Engineering," he said, the pride in his voice unmistakable. "I'm part of a team building a prototype for a sustainable energy generator. We've been working on it for months." Sarah arched a brow, clearly impressed. "That's ambitious," she said. "And you're representing your school? That's a big deal." "It is," Kevin said, his excitement bubbling to the surface. "Our school doesn't have a lot of resources, so we had to get creative. My mom even helped us raise money for the materials." Sarah smiled at the mention of his mother. "She must be proud of you." Kevin's smile faltered slightly, his thoughts briefly drifting to her exhausted face as she hugged him goodbye that morning. "She is," he said quietly. "She's done so much for me. I don't want to let her down." Sarah glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "You're not letting anyone down," she said firmly. "In fact, I think you're doing the exact opposite." They reached the gate, where a crowd of passengers waited for boarding to begin. Sarah led Kevin to the counter, where the gate agent looked up in surprise. "Miss Lewis," the agent greeted, his tone respectful. "How can I assist you?" "This young man is flying to Chicago," Sarah said, her tone authoritative but calm. "Please ensure he's taken care of." The agent nodded quickly, printing a new boarding pass without question. "Of course, ma'am. I'll make sure he's all set." Sarah handed the pass to Kevin, who stared at it as if it were a golden ticket. "Thank you," he said again, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah smiled warmly. "You're welcome. Now, I've arranged for you to sit in first class. Consider it an apology on behalf of the airline." Kevin's eyes widened. "First class? But I don't need." Sarah raised a hand to stop him. "You deserve it," she said simply. "Besides, I'll feel better knowing you're comfortable after what happened." Kevin was at a loss for words. All he could do was nod, his gratitude evident in his expression. As the boarding announcement echoed through the terminal, Sarah reached into her pocket and handed him a small business card. "If you ever need anything," she said, don't hesitate to reach out. And when you win that competition, let me know. I'd love to hear about it. Kevin took the card, his hands trembling slightly. The words Sarah Lewis, Executive Operations Manager, stared back at him in bold print, followed by her contact information. Thank you, he said again, his voice steadier this time. Sarah nodded, her expression softening. Good luck, Kevin. And remember, don't let anyone tell you where you belong. With that, she stepped back, watching as he boarded the plane. As Kevin disappeared into the cabin, Sarah's expression shifted, her warm smile giving way to a steely resolve. She turned on her heel, heading back toward the terminal with purpose. She had unfinished business to attend to. Sarah Lewis strode purposefully through the terminal, her heels clicking against the polished floor like a metronome. The warm satisfaction of helping Kevin had been replaced by a simmering anger, and she knew exactly where to channel it. She retraced her steps to the check-in counter where Miss Stone was stationed. The agent stood stiffly, her lips pressed into a tight line as she interacted with a passenger. Sarah folded her arms and waited, her piercing gaze fixed on the woman. When the passenger moved on, Miss Stone turned, her face draining of color as she saw Sarah standing there. Miss Lewis, she stammered, forcing a smile. I didn't expect you to return so soon. I'm sure you didn't, Sarah said coolly. She placed her hands on the counter, leaning slightly forward. We need to have a conversation. Now. Miss Stone glanced around nervously, her eyes darting to the line of passengers. Perhaps we can talk later? It's quite busy. Now, Sarah repeated, her tone brooking no argument. The agent's shoulders slumped as she nodded reluctantly. She stepped away from the counter, motioning for a colleague to take over, and followed Sarah to a nearby office. Once inside, Sarah closed the door firmly behind them. Would you like to explain what happened back there? Sarah began, her voice sharp and unyielding. Miss Stone swallowed hard. I was just following protocol, she said defensively. The boy's ticket seemed suspicious. Suspicious? Sarah interrupted, her eyes narrowing. There was nothing suspicious about his ticket, and you know it. I reviewed it myself, so let's not waste time pretending this was about protocol. Miss Stone hesitated, her hands fidgeting at her sides. I was just trying to do my job. Your job, Sarah said, her voice growing colder, is to provide excellent customer service, to treat every passenger with dignity and respect. What I witnessed was the complete opposite. The agent opened her mouth to protest, but Sarah cut her off. Let me be clear, she said, her tone like ice. Your behavior was discriminatory, unprofessional, and unacceptable. You humiliated a young man who did nothing to deserve it. And this isn't the first time, is it? Miss Stone paled further. I don't know what you mean. Sarah reached into her blazer pocket and pulled out a tablet. She tapped the screen a few times before turning it toward Miss Stone. These are complaints filed by passengers over the past 6 months, she said. All of them describe encounters with a rude and dismissive agent, you. And this is just what's been officially documented. I shudder to think how many others chose not to report their experience. Miss Stone's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. I didn't mean to. Sarah raised a hand to silence her. Intent doesn't matter. Impact does. And the impact of your actions could have cost that boy his opportunity, a boy who, might I add, was representing his school in a national competition. The agent looked down, her face flushing with shame. I'm placing you on immediate suspension, Sarah continued, her voice resolute. You'll be required to attend mandatory training on diversity and inclusion. During this time, your conduct will be thoroughly reviewed. If I find even a hint of further misconduct, you will be terminated. Miss Stone's head snapped up, her eyes wide with panic. Please, Miss Lewis, This is non-negotiable, Sarah said firmly. I suggest you use this time to reflect on your behavior and make the necessary changes. If you can't, there's no place for you in this company. With that, Sarah turned and opened the door, signaling the end of the conversation. Miss Stone stood frozen for a moment before slinking out of the office, her head bowed. Sarah watched her leave, a mix of satisfaction and frustration swirling within her. She hated having to deal with employees like Miss Stone, but she knew it was her responsibility to uphold the company's values. She wouldn't tolerate discrimination on her watch. Not today, not ever. As Sarah walked back to her office, her mind returned to Kevin. She couldn't shake the image of him standing at the counter, clutching his backpack, and trying to remain composed despite the humiliation. When she reached her desk, She picked up her phone and dialed a number. "Hello, this is Sarah Lewis," she said when the line connected. "I'd like to speak with the CEO about a potential scholarship program." "Yes, it's urgent." She leaned back in her chair, her determination unwavering. Helping Kevin get to Chicago was only the beginning. If she had her way, his story would inspire the kind of systemic change that would ensure no one else had to endure what he did. This wasn't just about righting a wrong. It was about creating opportunities. Because Kevin Baker wasn't just a teenager. He was the future, and Sarah Lewis intended to make sure he had every chance to succeed. Kevin sat in the luxurious first-class seat, still feeling as though he was dreaming. The wide leather cushion cradled him in comfort, and the spacious legroom was a far cry from the cramped rows he'd expected in economy. A flight attendant approached with a warm smile, offering him a menu of refreshments. Kevin blinked at her, unsure how to respond. "Would you like something to drink?" she asked kindly. Just water, please," Kevin replied, his voice cautious. He wasn't used to being treated like this, like he mattered. As the attendant walked away, Kevin leaned back in his seat, trying to process everything that had happened in the past hour. The humiliation at the counter, Miss Lewis stepping in, the first-class upgrade, it all felt surreal. He glanced out the window, watching the airport staff bustle below as the plane prepared for takeoff. His mind wandered to the competition. Would the judges be impressed with his team's prototype? Would they dismiss him like so many others had before? A familiar knot of doubt tightened in his stomach, but he pushed it aside. "Focus on what you can control, Kevin," he told himself. "You've made it this far." The soft chime of the captain's voice broke his thoughts. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard. We'll be departing shortly for Chicago, with an estimated flight time of 2 hours. Please ensure your seatbelts are fastened and enjoy the flight." The plane began to taxi, the vibrations beneath him sending a thrill through his chest. Kevin had read about the physics of flight in textbooks, but experiencing it firsthand was something else entirely. As the plane sped down the runway and lifted into the air, a small smile tugged at his lips. For the first time in days, he felt a glimmer of excitement. As the plane leveled out, Kevin noticed a man seated across the aisle watching him with a curious expression. The man, in his mid-50s, was dressed in a crisp suit, his silver hair neatly combed. He offered Kevin a polite nod. "First time flying?" the man asked, his voice friendly. Kevin hesitated before nodding. "Yeah, first time in first class, too," he admitted. The man chuckled. "It's a nice way to travel, isn't it? What brings you to Chicago?" Kevin hesitated again, unsure how much to share, but something about the man's kind demeanor put him at ease. "I'm going to a STEM competition," he said. "My team built a prototype for a sustainable energy generator." The man raised his eyebrows, clearly impressed. "That's no small feat. You must be quite the engineer." Kevin shrugged, his modesty kicking in. "It's a team effort. We've been working on it for months." "Well, I hope you knock their socks off," the man said. "The world needs more innovators like you." Kevin smiled shyly. "Thanks." The man extended his hand. "John Baker," he said. Kevin blinked in surprise at the coincidence of their shared last name. "Kevin Baker," he replied, shaking the man's hand. John laughed. "Looks like we're distant relatives," he joked. "Well, Kevin Baker, I wish you the best of luck. Maybe one day, I'll see your name in the headlines." The idea made Kevin chuckle nervously. "Maybe," he said, though the thought seemed far-fetched. As the flight continued, Kevin pulled out his notebook and began reviewing his team's plans for the competition. His sketches of the prototype filled the pages, detailed and precise. The design wasn't just an assignment. It was a piece of him, a testament to his determination and creativity. But as he studied the notes, his thoughts drifted back to the airport. The sting of Miss Stone's words lingered, threatening to sap his confidence. He clenched his jaw, forcing himself to focus. "You belong here," he whispered to himself, repeating Sarah's words. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." The memory of her unwavering support gave him strength. He thought about his mother, working tirelessly back home, and the sacrifices she had made to get him to this point. He wouldn't let them down. Not now, not ever. As the plane began its descent, John leaned over again. "Kevin," he said, "when you win that competition, and I have a feeling you will, remember to celebrate. Hard work deserves to be recognized." Kevin grinned, his earlier nervousness replaced by a flicker of confidence. "Thanks, Mr. Baker. I'll keep that in mind." The man smiled warmly. "You take care of yourself, Kevin, and keep dreaming big." As the plane touched down in Chicago, Kevin felt a surge of determination. He wasn't just here to compete. He was here to prove that his dreams were valid, no matter what obstacles stood in his way. Little did he know, his journey was only just beginning. The cab ride from O'Hare Airport to the convention center was a blur of towering skyscrapers and bustling streets, but Kevin barely noticed. His mind raced with anticipation as he clutched his backpack, which now felt heavier than it had on the plane. Inside it lay not just the blueprints for his team's prototype, but the weight of his hopes and the sacrifices that had brought him here. The cab pulled up to the sprawling convention center, its glass facade gleaming under the midday sun. Kevin stepped out, his breath catching at the sight of the massive banners hanging above the entrance. They read, International STEM Innovation Competition 2024. Around him, students and mentors from all over the country bustled in, their voices a mix of excitement and nerves. This is it, Kevin whispered to himself, tightening the straps of his backpack. He squared his shoulders and walked through the revolving doors, the hum of activity growing louder with every step. Inside, the convention center was a whirlwind of activity. Booths lined the expansive hall, each one showcasing the work of brilliant young minds. Kevin found his team's designated area, a small booth with a table, a display board, and an outlet for their equipment. His teammates, Lisa and Frank, were already setting up. Kevin, Lisa called, her face lighting up. She was the team's programmer, her sharp mind complemented by an infectious enthusiasm. You made it. We were starting to worry. Barely, Kevin said with a small laugh. You wouldn't believe the morning I had. Frank, the team's logistical guru, glanced up from his laptop. Good to see you, man. You ready for this? Kevin nodded, though the flutter of nerves in his stomach persisted. Let's do it. Together. The team unpacked their prototype, a sleek, compact model of a sustainable energy generator. It was the culmination of months of late nights, trial and error, and relentless determination. Kevin ran his fingers over the polished metal casing, pride swelling in his chest. This is going to blow them away, Lisa said confidently. We've got this. Hours later, the team stood before the judges, in a room that felt far larger than it actually was. The panel of 5 industry leaders sat at a long table, their expressions unreadable as they leafed through the team's proposal. Kevin took a deep breath and stepped forward. He had volunteered to lead the presentation, a choice that felt bold at the time, but now filled him with apprehension. Good afternoon, he began, his voice steady despite the hammering of his heart. We're Team Horizon, and this is our prototype for a sustainable energy generator. He launched into the presentation, explaining the design's key features, the innovative materials they used, and the potential for real-world application. As he spoke, his confidence grew. The judges leaned forward, their interest evident, and Kevin felt the room shift in their favor. Lisa demonstrated the software integration, while Frank explained the logistics of scaling the design for larger communities. Kevin concluded with a passionate appeal, emphasizing the importance of innovation in addressing global energy challenges. This isn't just a project, he said, his voice firm. It's a vision for a future where sustainable energy is accessible to everyone. And we believe that future starts here. After the presentation, the judges asked questions, sharp, probing ones that tested the team's knowledge and adaptability. Kevin fielded most of them, his earlier nerves replaced by a quiet confidence. He didn't have all the answers, but he met each question head-on, refusing to back down. When the session ended, the judges nodded, thanked the team, and moved on to the next booth. Kevin exhaled deeply, the tension in his shoulders finally releasing. We did it, Lisa said, her eyes shining. Kevin, you crushed it. You both did too, Kevin replied, a smile breaking across his face. For the first time all day, he allowed himself to feel the hope that had been building inside him. As the day wore on, Kevin wandered the convention floor, marveling at the creativity and brilliance on display. But as the evening approached, his focus returned to the main stage, where the award ceremony was set to take place. The room filled with competitors, mentors, and spectators. The air buzzed with anticipation as the host took the stage, a charismatic figure who expertly built suspense with every word. Finally, the moment came, and the winner of the International STEM Innovation Competition 2024 is. The host paused dramatically, the tension palpable. Team Horizon. For a moment, Kevin couldn't move. The words felt unreal, echoing in his ears. Then Lisa grabbed his arm, and Frank clapped him on the back, their cheers snapping him out of his daze. They hurried to the stage, where the host handed them a gleaming trophy. Cameras flashed as Kevin held it high, his heart swelling with pride. He looked out at the crowd and spotted Sarah Lewis standing near the back, her smile warm and approving. After the ceremony, Sarah approached Kevin, her expression filled with pride. "Congratulations," she said. "I knew you'd do it." "Thank you," Kevin replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I couldn't have done this without you." Sarah shook her head. "You did this because of your hard work and talent. I just made sure you had the chance to show it." She handed him an envelope. "This is from the airline. It's a scholarship offer, full tuition to any university you choose, along with a mentorship program in aviation and engineering." Kevin stared at her, speechless. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Sarah said with a smile. "You've earned it." Tears pricked the corners of Kevin's eyes as he accepted the envelope. In that moment, he realized this wasn't just a victory. It was the beginning of something much bigger, a future filled with possibilities he hadn't dared to dream of before. And as he walked out of the convention center that night, the trophy in one hand and the scholarship letter in the other, Kevin knew he had proven to himself and the world that he belonged exactly where he was. The drive back to the hotel was quieter than Kevin expected. His teammates were animated, buzzing about their win and the opportunities it would bring, but Kevin sat silently, staring out of the cab window. The city lights blurred past, mirroring the rush of emotions swirling inside him: pride, gratitude, disbelief, and a lingering thread of uncertainty. "Kevin," Lisa said gently, pulling him from his thoughts. "You okay?" He turned to her, managing a small smile. "Yeah, just processing everything. It still doesn't feel real." Frank grinned from the front seat. "Believe it, man. We just made history." Kevin nodded, his grip tightening on the trophy resting on his lap. History, he thought. The weight of that word settled in his chest. He wasn't just representing himself or his team. He was carrying the hopes of his community, the sacrifices of his mother, and the belief that people like him belonged in spaces like this. That night, after his teammates had gone to bed, Kevin sat alone in his hotel room, the trophy gleaming on the desk beside him. He stared at his phone, hesitating before dialing his mother's number. It rang twice before her familiar voice answered, weary but filled with love. "Kevin, how are you, baby? Did you get there okay? How was the competition?" Her questions came in a rapid stream, and Kevin couldn't help but smile. "Mom," he said, his voice cracking slightly, "we won." There was a beat of silence before her laughter bubbled through the line, full of joy and relief. "Oh, Kevin, I knew you could do it. I'm so proud of you." Kevin swallowed the lump in his throat. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mom. All those nights you stayed up with me, all the extra shifts you worked. This is as much your win as it is mine." Her voice softened. "No, baby, this is yours. You earned this. I'm just glad I could help you get there." They talked late into the night, sharing the details of the competition and the scholarship offer from the airline. By the time they hung up, Kevin felt a renewed sense of purpose. He wasn't just doing this for himself. He was doing it for his mother and everyone who had ever doubted they could reach for something greater. The next morning, as Kevin packed his belongings, there was a knock at the door. He opened it to find Sarah Lewis standing there, her expression unreadable. "Good morning, Kevin," she said. "Mind if we talk for a moment?" "Of course," Kevin replied, stepping aside to let her in. Sarah glanced around the room, her eyes landing on the trophy. "Looks good on you," she said with a small smile. "Thank you," Kevin said. "I still can't believe it." Sarah nodded, her expression turning serious. "I wanted to see you before you left because I think you're going to face some challenges going forward." Kevin's brow furrowed. "Challenges?" "Yes," Sarah said. "You've achieved something remarkable, but there will always be people who try to diminish your success, people who will question if you belong in this space." Her words echoed the doubts Kevin had battled for years. "How do I deal with that?" he asked. "You prove them wrong," Sarah said simply. "Every day, you keep pushing forward, keep breaking barriers. And when you've reached the top, you turn around and help others do the same." Kevin nodded slowly, her words sinking in. "I'll do my best." "I know you will," Sarah said. She handed him a folder. "This is a detailed mentorship program we've designed specifically for you. It includes introductions to industry leaders, internships, and funding for any projects you want to pursue. Use it wisely." Kevin opened the folder, his eyes widening at the opportunities laid out before him. "I don't know how to thank you," he said. Just make the most of it, Sarah replied. And remember, Kevin, you're not just building a career, you're paving the way for others. The flight home felt different. Kevin sat in the economy cabin this time, but it didn't matter. He was heading back not just as a competitor, but as a winner. The trophy sat safely in his lap, a tangible reminder of what he was capable of achieving. When the plane touched down, he was greeted by his mother, who enveloped him in a tight hug the moment he stepped off the plane. Tears streamed down her face as she held him, her pride evident in every word she spoke. "You did it," she whispered. "I knew you would." As they drove home, Kevin couldn't help but think about everything that had brought him to this moment. The struggle at the airport, Sarah's intervention, the long hours of preparation. It had all led to this. But he knew it was only the beginning. Back at school, Kevin's win sparked a wave of excitement and inspiration. Teachers and students alike congratulated him, and his story became a source of pride for the entire community. But Kevin didn't let the attention distract him. He threw himself into mentoring younger students, sharing his knowledge and encouraging them to dream big. The scholarship from the airline opened doors he hadn't dared to imagine. With Sarah's guidance, he secured an internship at a leading engineering firm, where he began developing a larger version of his team's prototype. His work attracted attention from industry leaders, and soon, he was invited to present at conferences and collaborate on groundbreaking projects. But through it all, Kevin remained grounded. He never forgot the struggles that had shaped him or the people who had lifted him when he needed it most. And as he stood on the stage years later, delivering a keynote speech at a global innovation summit, he looked out at the crowd and saw a young boy in the front row, wide-eyed and full of wonder. Kevin smiled, recognizing himself in that boy. "You belong here," he said, his voice strong and steady. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise."